Perfect. So welcome everybody to this ABW webinar. It's really a pleasure for me to introduce the speaker today, which is Andrea Tuni from Politecnico di Torino. So in fact, he's talking about a topic for which he also won the Euro Prize for OR for the Common Good, together with several co-authors. And so I know a lot from this project, and I'm really impressed by that, and also about the impact. And so I'm really very glad, Andrea, that you were willing to give this presentation on this project. So the floor is yours. But before I give you the floor, sorry, I would like to say that the presentation is about 45 minutes. And if you have questions, then that is, let's say, 15 minutes afterwards, room for that. And then you can use your microphone directly. So questions afterwards. So the floor is yours, Andrea.
Okay, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you very much, Dick, for the introduction and for inviting me to give this talk for Analytics for a Better World. I'm Andrea Tuni. I'm an assistant professor at Politecnico di Torino, Department of Management and Production Engineering. And today I will talk to you about supporting Brazilian smallholder farmers to distribute the produce through institutional market. Which is a very social-oriented application of OR. Today, I'm here speaking, but I'm representing a very large international research group that spans across 6 countries and 2 continents, with, of course, a very strong core of the research group being located in Brazil, where all the fieldwork took place. I originally started my research at the University of Strathclyde before moving back to Italy to Politecnico di Torino, where I'm currently based. This project was funded by several research bodies, both from the UK and from Brazil, hence the logo you can see on the left, with the aim to help marginalized and vulnerable farmers in Brazil. The man you can see in this picture, his name is Edgar Rodriguez. He's many things. He's a charismatic and inspirational leader. He's a bit of a philosopher. He's a community leader, but most of all, he likes to describe himself as a smallholder farmer. He's one of around 1.5 million vulnerable and socially excluded smallholder farmers in the country. These farmers rely on their activities in the fields, in the farm, both for their subsistence, but also for income and to basically to survive. They often make one of the poorest segment in the country with the lowest income. And one of the main reasons for this is that they still perform subsistence agriculture because they lack access to the market for their produce. This is a problem that is shared by many developing countries around the world. However, in Brazil, there is a potential solution which was developed and pursued from the government around a decade ago. This is the Piano Nacional de Alimentação Escolar, whose acronym is PNAE, and roughly translated in English as the National School Feeding Program. This is an enlightened policy that prescribes that public schools need to spend around 30% of the funds they have been allocated for schools' meals to purchase produce from socially disadvantaged groups, such as a smallholder farmer. The mechanism through which PNAE program works is that of non-competitive bidding, in the sense that farmers are not made compete against each other on the price variable, but they are chosen as a supplier based on 2 criteria. The first is the proximity. So this priority is given to local sourcing. This is made for two reasons. On one hand, this guarantees that the food is locally sourced for the students in the school. And second is that the benefits of the program are spread all across the country. And the second criteria is social exclusion. So there is a priority given to specific social groups that live in disadvantaged conditions. This program offers some interesting opportunities for smallholder farmers and other disadvantaged groups, in the sense they can slowly transition from a purely subsistence agriculture towards an initial form of commercial agriculture. And they do so by entering a protected market with the very low to no risks financially, as they don't need to bear any marketing costs, and they do not face any risks in terms of also produce going unsold. So this could be an interesting opportunity, smoothing the transitions towards commercial agriculture. The P&AE process, though, is not an easy one. We can summarize through 5 main steps that involve both public authorities on the top and farmers on the bottom. This process kicks off with the release of public calls for products from the schools. This means that each schools provide a breakdown of the produce they require for a semester or a school year, and the amount they require for that semester or school year. Then the second step is on farmer side, and farmers need to choose which products they bid for. When I mean bid products, we mean essentially here school product combinations. This means that farmers can bid in one school just for a subset of the products the school is requiring, or at the same time, farmers can decide to bid for a specific produce, let's say potato or cabbage, in certain schools, but not in other. In this case, the horizon planning we are working on is a semester if the school is municipally owned, or 1 year if the school is owned from the state. Then the ball rolls back to the public authorities, which need to select the suppliers based on the 2 criteria we saw earlier, proximity and social exclusion. After that, they inform the farmers about the bids they have been awarded. At this stage, farmers can need to make a second decision, which is whether to sign or not to sign the contract they have been awarded. So the farmers have the option to turn down some contracts, and this is because, for example, they may have been awarded only one produce in a specific school or geographical area, making for them inconvenient to supply these schools because, for example, of the transportation cost. So they might turn down certain offers, which is a second decision that farmers need to make. Then there is the third step, which instead has a much shorter horizon planning, only 1 week, and is the actual physical distribution of the produce to schools. So basically, the whole quantity that are scheduled for a semester are broken down by each week of the semester, and farmers receive the notification from the school 1 week in advance with the information about the deliveries that are requested from school for the following week. And they need to organize the distribution in a very similar fashion to a classical vehicle routing problem. So 3 decisions farmers need to face. We developed accordingly 3 decision support systems with quite a lack of imagination. We named them DSS1, DSS2, and DSS3. I hope you forgive us for that. And despite all these options, the opportunity that the P&A offers to farmers, as the program is specifically designed for them, farmers still face several challenges to take part in this program. It's very hard for them to estimate the total cost, including the production cost, the transportation cost, and the admin cost associated to the admin work. And even when the cost can be kind of estimated, they struggle to understand what is the expected profitability of participating in each call. This stems from 2 factors. First of all, and this is quite a particular feature of P&AE, the same products can be paid different prices at different schools. So this means that potato can bear two different prices paid at different schools that are even in the same city. So this makes the problem quite more complicated. And secondly, they have an information asymmetry as they work through the process, as they cannot estimate carefully the transportation cost, as this is depending on the outcome of the bids first and then on the schedule of the delivery. Even when the bids that the farmers learn about the bids, so they know which schools they're going to supply, it's hard for them to calculate the expected profit. And it's very hard also for them then to plan and coordinate the distribution activities, and they have to work with a very short time frame, only 1 week to arrange such activities. So all in all, our project aimed to support smallholder farmers into 3 key decisions. The first is whether to bid or not to bid for each available product school combination. The second is whether to accept or reject the awarded product school combination that the farmers were successful for the bidding process. And the third one is to optimize the distribution of agricultural produce to schools in order to minimize the costs. In doing so, we try to remove subjectivity and intuition from the decision-making process, as working with gut feelings, farmers ended up often being in disagreement among each other, and they ended up spending a lot of time in discussion within their cooperative on how to arrange all this. So an objective solution was something we were aiming for. So as I mentioned, free decision support system. We worked on this decision support system within an amazing community. It's the community of Canudos. It's a smallholder farming settlement, which is located in the Goiás state in Brazil, roughly 400 kilometers south from Brasilia. There are 320 families in the settlements, and around 25 families are part of a cooperative that is dedicated to supplying the products through PNAE. They have 10.5 hectares, which are available for annual crops within the cooperative. And on top of that, they have some perennial crops as well, such as tangerines, banana trees, and so on. So we work with this community, which we will hardly find on the map. There is not even a paved road reaching the settlement. And that was our case study for our work. So we started by looking at the first 2 decisions. As you might remember, both these decisions have an horizon planning corresponding to 1 semester at least. So we worked together on these 2 decision support systems at first. We look at what's available in the literature in terms of bid-no-bid literature, and we found little support on that. First of all, because there were no models that fulfill our needs, because they were either based on a huge amount of historical data, which we were lacking, such as the model-driven DSS. They were knowledge-driven DSS that would still need inputs from decision makers, therefore not ruling out some sort of subjectivity on the topic. And there were as well the data development analysis-based method, but none of these options actually was functional to find an optimal solution for the bidding, for the bid-no-bid decision. Moreover, the literature on the topic is predominantly based in the construction industry, no surprise that. And while our case shares some of these features of the construction industry, such as the fact that the other bidders are unknown, in this case, there is a sensible decision in the sense that the price, in our case, is known differently from what happens in the construction industry. And we do not need to define a markup in order to maximize the profit. So the markup definition is not part of the decision-making set in our case. So there was no application basically for non-competitive bidding. So we had basically to start from scratch. What we did is working on a mixed integral linear programming method with the objective function of maximizing the expected profits for farmers. The profit in this case is calculating through 3 terms that you can see in the orange box. First of all is the unit contribution margin, which is basically the revenues that are generated by each school product combination. So the price, PIK, that is the price paid by each school for each product, minus the production cost for each product, times, of course, the quantities. And we have to, of course, take into account also the costs, which in this case were of two types. First of all is the bidding bureaucracy cost, which is the admin cost related to submitting an application to each municipality. And second of all, there is the estimated transportation cost, which at this point is only an estimated cost, as the delivery schedule is not known to farmers. With this respect, we have three decision variables, all binary. First of all is ZR, which is equal to 1 if farmers bid in any municipal cluster R. So they submit any bid within a municipality and therefore will incur in the bureaucracy cost for this municipality. Then we have XK, which is again binary and is equal to 1 if farmers submit a bid for a specific school K. And then we have YIKR, which is specific to a product I within a school K within a municipal cluster R, which again is a binary variable. So this was the objective function and the decision variables we work with. And of course, we had several constraints that we used. Some are linkages between schools, cluster, and products. So I will not go through all of them. There is, of course, farmers can only submit bid for produce they can produce. So the production capability, which is constraint number 2. And they decided to have a maximum number of calls they bid for because they don't want to be overloaded with the admin workload. Also, farmers can bid only specific schools, as some calls are forbidden to them. This is constraint number 5. If they didn't manage to, let's say, fulfill their promises in the previous academic year and they didn't deliver all the produce they committed to. And then 3 quite important constraints are 9 throughout 11, which helps us to estimate the minimum number of trips that are required and therefore to estimate the transportation cost. First of all, number 11 tells us that, and this is based on historical information, the number of trips needs to be at least equal to the number of weeks that are within a planning period, such as a semester. But then, of course, they need also to meet the capacity constraint of the standard vehicle that farmers have available, both in terms of weight and in terms of volume. Then we moved on to the second decision support system. Again, the objective function is to maximize the profits. Here you can see that the formulation slightly changed in the objective function, as we have only the unit contribution margin added the estimated transport cost, whereas the bureaucratic cost here disappeared. This cost is a sunken cost at this stage, as farmers have already submitted the bid. They have been informed also a bit about the outcome of the bids. So this cost is not anymore something to take into consideration at this stage. We have a single decision variable here, which is mirroring the previous decision support system, and it's YIKR, which is equal to 1 if farmers decide to sign the contract for a specific product I, school K combination with school located within the municipal cluster R. At this point, we can see that most of the constraints mirror those available in DSS1. We have some additional constraints here, which are number 21. Of course, farmers can only sign contracts that they were awarded. And we have 2 constraints, 14 and 15, which are quite important at this point. And they are about the production capacity for annual crops. So constraint 14 tells us that there is a maximum basically production capacity for each produce that farmers are able to produce. This is because there is only specific types of land that can be cultivated for specific crops, and therefore this poses a limit on their production capacity that cannot be surpassed. At the same time, there are certain plots of lands where different crops can compete somehow against each other, as the same plot of land can be used by different produces. And therefore, there is a constraint number 15 also on the total area that is available for all the animal crops in order not to exceed the production capacity that farmers can effectively produce. And this is not to incur in the penalty of missing some deliveries, which would shut some doors to the farmers for the following years. We got quite a lot of input data from the Canudos case study. And I really must thank our colleagues from Universidade Federal de Goiás for making the biggest chunk of the work on the data collection. We gather information about municipality, where schools are located and their distance from Canudos, the bureaucracy costs associated to each municipality. We have some average vehicle information regarding its capacity in terms of weight and volume and the variable cost of transport per kilometers. We have the quantities of produce requested by each school for each product. So this is some sort of big matrices, which is replicated for the price paid by each school for each product. Because don't forget, each school can pay a different price for the same produce. So this is a very particular feature of the PNAE program. And these matrices then appear to us also in the results. So here you can see in the first column all the produces, and on the first row you can see all the schools coded 1 to 24. The cells shaded in green are those that were selected for bidding, and those in red are those that were not selected for bidding at this stage. There are several reasons why certain schools may have not been selected. For example, school 24 here was not selected because of the very low quantities. There was only one produce requested, and this means that with the constraint that the number of trips should be at least equal to the number of weeks in a semester, it would incur in 22 trips to deliver just 8 kilos of product. This might be the worst case scenario, but it might happen. And so this school was dismissed because of the transportation costs that were too high. In other cases, and this is the case of carrots for school 5 and 15, we see that these schools were not selected because the prices paid in this school was exceptionally low and was even below the production cost. So the optimal solution is to drop out this bid because they're not profitable in any case. And finally, we can see that there are some red cells scattered between school 17 to 24. This is the municipal cluster of Posse. They are all located in the same municipality. And in this case, we see that the volume capacity is the active constraint here. So the model prescribes that we pushes the farmers to deliver the minimum at least one time per week. So this makes 22 trips in one semester. However, because of the volume capacity, the 23rd trip is not activated because the marginal revenues that would be generated from the mix of this produce would not be enough to cover the transportation cost of the extra trip. So with this scenario, the expected profit for farmers would be around 51,000 Brazilian reais under this condition. And this is the best case scenario if they get awarded all the bids. This, unfortunately, is not always the case. As you can see, the table shrunk significantly as farmers were not selected in 2 municipal clusters due to the proximity criterion. At the same time, they were not selected also for tangerine, the 2 cells in yellow at the bottom, in this case for the social criterion. At the same time, other bids were not available. If you remember, farmers decided not to bid for carrots, as the production, the prices paid by these two schools was higher than was lower than the production cost. So these bids were also not available for them to sign. And again, we see in green what the contracts that are signed, and in red those that are not signed. In the case of banana, here there was a constraint that was related to the production capacity. So the model pushes to supply the schools that pay the highest price among those that requested banana until the production capacity is fulfilled. The expected profit, of course, drops at this point, and this would be a very good estimation of what the final profit of farmers would be, which is around 32,000 Brazilian reais. On top of being very socially oriented, these two models also are interesting for the academic community. We use a very standard and well-established OR method, which is mixed interlinear programming, but we applied it to the new domain, which is the bid-no-bid decision making. And in doing so, this is also the first work that achieves to identify an optimal strategy for the bid-no-bid decision. Moreover, we also apply this into the new area of non-competitive bidding, focusing on in a developing country, in agricultural sector, and in targeting an institutional market, namely the largest institutional market in the program in the world. Then, once farmers have signed this contract, it's time to move on a more operational phase and deliver their produce on a weekly basis to the school. And this is where DSS Free kicks off. DSS Free is a bit more of a standard practice in the OR community, if you want to know, as it's basically an extension of the classical vehicle routing problem, in which we have to serve specific nodes, starting and ending our tours from a depot. The depot in our case is our farm at Canudos. The problem is a variant of the VRP in the sense that we have an heterogeneous fleet, so we have different types of vehicle. And we have a limited heterogeneous fleet, as farmers have only a certain set of vehicles available at the settlement. And also split deliveries are allowed. This means that within the planning horizon, which is 1 week, farmers can deliver more than once at the same school. That says, delivering part of the goods on a Monday and part of the produce on a Tuesday, as an example. All these features make the problem quite hard from a numerical perspective, meaning that exact methods are not exactly suitable for this problem. So heuristic and meta-heuristics approaches are dominant here. An optimal solution was only identified up to now for a case of an unlimited heterogeneous fleet, so not exactly our case. In this case, we had again we have 5 decisions that are associated to the vehicle routing problem. These are kind of standard one for the VRP. The first is the determination of the optimal number of tours to serve the schools. The second is the assignment of the demand of which schools to 1 or more tours according to the option offered to split deliveries. Then, of course, there is the vehicle selection to be allocated to each tour. And then we go back to the sequence, which is the exact routing that is done within each tour. And to conclude, the loading quantity of each vehicle for each tour, including the breakdown of such quantities among the schools that are going to be served. So these are quite standard decisions associated to the VRP. We made also some assumptions. So the first is that the distances between nodes are symmetric and respect the triangular inequality. The fact that we don't have any fixed costs associated to the setup of the fleet, as the fleet already exists at the settlement. The variable costs are vehicle dependent. This means that different vehicles have different traveling costs. And also the school demand can be even larger than the capacity of the largest among the available vehicles, and this is somehow self-explanatory, as you know, otherwise these schools could not be served without split deliveries. We make also an assumption regarding the multiple products. This is a standard assumption in VRP problems. So we shrink down the basically all the products, we aggregated them based by their weight for transportation purposes to simplify a little bit the problem. And finally, there was a fixed unloading time in each school. This is fixed because the quantities are relatively small, so there is drivers do not spend so much time unloading, but they have to enter the school and fill up some paperwork. Also, once again, so this is what takes most of their time. So this was assumed to be fixed. Of course, being the problem quite numerically hard, we work with heuristics. So following some initial trials, we identify which could be the maximum number of schools that we can solve directly with the heterogeneous fleet split delivery vehicle routing problem. And this N was set at 10 for our cases, because of course the computational complexity explodes with an increasing number of nodes, and this would not fulfill the purposes of this work. So first of all, it would not fulfill the fact that this needs to run on a weekly basis. And second, that it needs to be run in a setting in a developing countries where the technologies available are quite limited. So if the number of schools is below 10, we go straight to the VRP done at the school level. If the number of schools is above 10, we need to proceed with some clustering activities. So we use the DBSCAN, which is a density-based clustering algorithm. And basically, we set a minimum number of points that can make up one cluster, and a radius from each school to determine the other schools they would be aggregated with. If the number of clusters with the initial radius threshold does not fall below the number n, 10, we increase the threshold until this condition is met. And then we move to step number 2. So we solve the HFSD VRP at the level of clusters. So we use as nodes the clusters with aggregated demand. And then if we see that there are no split deliveries within one cluster, basically that's us done. And we solve within each tour the split delivery vehicle routing problem, once again, to determine the exact route within each cluster. If there are split deliveries within one cluster, these are aggregated together, all these clusters, not to miss the information about the split delivery at certain cluster. And this leads eventually to the end of the process. In terms of formulation, the objective function is a standard transport cost minimization function that is used in a vehicle routing problem. In this case, we have a free decision variable. We have ZFT, which is equal to 1 if a tour is operating started at the farm F. We have the classic Xij, which is equal to 1 if an arc between nodes I and j is traveled from a vehicle of type V on tour T. And then we have the quantity of Y of product that is supplied to customer K by vehicle of type V on tour T. So these are the three decision variables. In terms of the constraints, these are also some of the classical vehicle routing constraints. We have here also some additional constraints, which are the maximum distance, 29, and maximum traveling time, 30. that prescribes us that the maximum duration of each tour, both in terms of distance and in terms of traveling time. And we have the constraint 31 about the fleet size limit, which is, of course, required because the farmers have only a limited set of vehicles available. The input data include a graph with 18 nodes, so quite a small one, a road distance matrix, and the aggregated weekly demand of products by each school for each week of the school semester. And here you can see also some information about the vehicles that were available at the Canudos settlement. So we had 4 types of vehicles, with different number of vehicles available for each type. We have the information about the variable cost and the maximum traveling distance and maximum traveling hours according to the Brazilian law. The results led us to the first result was the clustering. So this was largely mirroring existing municipality, with the exception of Pocelandia, which is not actually a real municipality. So for each basically cluster, we can see the letter that defines the cluster and the number which indicates the number of schools part of that cluster. We tested our model in 3 scenarios. A baseline scenario with non-zero demand in each of the school, a maximum quantity scenario to test the model with higher quantities, and the benchmark scenario where we wanted to find the optimal solution, albeit with a lower number of nodes, and compare our result, the result with the heuristics with the optimal solution. That's what we got in terms of output. So for each scenario, we get a tour code, the vehicle that's being employed, the cluster that are visited and the quantities, and then the breakdown by each school within each cluster. If you want to see that more visually, this is what happened, for example, for the baseline scenario, where we have 4 tours, 2 of which are performed by a pickup, 1 by a car, and 1, surprisingly, even by a motorcycles, as the quantities are quite low in certain clusters, and motorcycle is the cheapest way to travel. We can see that we obtain some counterintuitive maybe results, in the sense that there are actually some split deliveries in the cluster B in Cesarina in yellow, with 1 tour being performed by the car and 1 tour performed by the motorbike, and there is even a split delivery at the school level for the school. Then, in terms of benchmarking between the proposed heuristic and the optimal solution, these are the results. We can see that in our benchmark case, the results were unchanged, both in terms of tour, vehicle, cost, quantity, and time of the tour. You can see that the results are exactly the same. What changed significantly, of course, was the computational time. Using the heuristics, it took us only 42 seconds against 740,000 seconds, which is around 200 hours on a supercomputer at Karlsruhe Institute of Technology. So with the intended application in mind, of course, low computational time was surely one of the main criteria in deciding which approach to follow. And the heuristic in this sense delivered. In terms of contribution, of course, there is more niche contribution in this case, as this approach, nevertheless, is the first approach that identifies optimal solution, albeit for very small instances, for the heterogeneous fleet split delivery vehicle routing problem with a limited fleet. It has a low computational time, which aims to fulfill the social oriented application, and it was also applied to a real life solution within the farming community of Canudos. So this is what we did. But what is the impact of all this work in making the world a better place? In the end, we are all here for that reason today. The main The main aim of this work was to support the public policies that is targeting socially disadvantaged rural groups, and in some way guarantee that the funds are allocated to socially disadvantaged group reach their ultimate target. This is often not the case because farmers still struggle to take part in the contract, and many calls are still going up to today empty, so there are no applications. So operationalizing effectively the P&AE from the farmer side is key to have this socially oriented application actually working. For the farmers, this may mean increased income and a more stable financial security for their communities, which can help them to reduce the poverty as they make up the lowest income segment in Brazil. We work with one rural community in Canudos, but there are 1.5 million farmers in exactly the same situation in Brazil. So there is a huge potential for scale up of this work and to reach a huge target of user. And in order to do that, we are working to translate this work, get this work out of the university and reach the farmers by developing a mobile phone application to enhance its real life impact. So the application now is being trialed this semester with the Canudos community again from our partners in Goiás. So here you can see some screenshot. There is the landing page for farmers and for schools. Farmers have the opportunity to insert some data such as their production cost, their produce, to keep track of the application they submitted and to run in the background the DSS1 and DSS2 at this stage. This app is only targeting these two applications as they have a lower computational complexity. Here you can see some more screenshots. For example, is what farmers can see in terms of the calls, what is their status, if they're open in green, closed in red, yellow, soon approaching, and so on. And here there are some more screenshots about the produce, how they insert the data about what they can produce, which is basically feeding the data input into the final model. So to conclude, we integrated free sequential mixed integral linear programming decision support system to support Brazilian smallholder farmers. We're really proud of the real impact. These are words that were quotes from the Canudos farmers community. And if that means for them a more positive outlook and sustainable outlook for the future. That's why we don't want to stop here. We want for sure to make them fully independent in the bidding process. That means them being able to use the application effectively and without the guidance and support from the university partners. And also to explore the opportunity offered by agroecological farming in the sense that these products are paid a premium price through the P&AE, as they are considered somehow like it might be a biological product in Europe. And so this would offer them increase the income through this program. Nevertheless, this whole work aim to achieve an inclusive rural growth. We're targeting basically here three sustainable development goals simultaneously, which are to end poverty, to end hunger and achieve food security, and to reduce inequalities within the society, which are all achieved simultaneously by this work. If you're interested to learn more about this, here it's some of our publications. The DSS1 and 2 have been already published, and so you can refer to the publication on eJur, where DSS3 is still under review. So this was a bit like a bit more confidential, let's say, information. To conclude, I would like to leave you with this quote. O caminho se faz caminhando. which roughly translates in English by the path is made by those who are walking. So this is how the Edgar Rodriguez, the Canudos farmer leader, greeted us when we last left the settlement. And with this somehow hopeful but inspirational message is also how I would like to end this presentation, and to thank you also for your attention and listening.
Thank you very much, Andrea, for this very inspiring and then very clear presentation. So now the floor is open for questions, and so if you have questions, you can use your microphone directly. Are there any questions?
Grazie, Andrea. So very interesting work. So I was just wondering how often, for example, these farmers have to solve this problem on a weekly, daily basis?
Yeah.
And also, can you say anything about maybe estimate like how what percentage could be improved or something like that?
Okay, so to answer your first question, the decision on bidding or not bidding for a product school combination and to sign the contract is done once or twice a year.
Oh,
so
I see.
For municipal schools, it's done on a semester basis, so it's twice per year. And for government state-owned school, it's done once a year. So there is this is done once a time. That's why we believe that we're trying to make farmers slowly independent on this, because also they have time to address this decision. It's a bit more relaxed, the whole process. Whereas for the delivery of the produce to school, there is much a tighter timeline, because the school communicates only 1 week before to the farmer, so it's done on a weekly basis. So this is the horizon planning of the DSS3.
DSS3, I see. So DSS1 and 2 needs to be solved maybe once or twice a year, but DSS3 needs to be solved continuously.
Yeah. So that's why DSS3 is much more challenging, because it's more challenging computationally, first of all.
Yeah.
And it also has a very tight schedule. So that's why also on the translating the work into real life impact through the application, we're currently working just on DSS1 and DSS2, also because this is the ones that were developed first. And we still have to identify a suitable solution for DSS3. So, if you have any idea, any idea is welcome on this one.
No, thank you, and congratulations again for this work and for your reward. And final question maybe is, would it be possible to, in ideal world, solve all these 3 problems simultaneously? But that's probably not feasible or possible, right? So, because each time when we are doing by stages, we are losing something, but then the time frame is different and maybe operational level. So
yeah, the answer is no. It's not possible to solve this all at the same time, because basically we have different information at different stages of the bidding process. So I'm trying to recapture the slide where I summarized all this. Basically, the delivery, the information about the delivery of produce to schools is only available 1 week before the actual delivery. So it's not known at the stage of bidding. So when DSS1 takes place, nor at the time of signing the contract. So at this stage, we can only make a rough estimation on the transportation cost. We cannot optimize this at this stage. At the same time, when DSS3 takes place, the other decisions have already been made. So there is no way to go back.
Yeah, there's more information that you can. Okay, yeah. Great. Thanks.
Great. Are there any other questions? So again, you can use your microphone directly.
Yes, hello. This is Patricia. I I mean, agriculture is a little bit of, it's a difficult occupation. And one of the things that I understood was that farmers could be penalized if they didn't fulfill their application, their promises. But what happens if there is a problem? That happens very often in agriculture, right? Sometimes there is not enough rain, or sometimes there is a disease. So what happens? So that is question one. And then question two is, what is the percentage of farmers in Canudo that signed with this application? I mean, to use this application.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a very, very valid question, both of them. So the first question, as probably everyone who's worked in agriculture will tell you, it's something quite hard to predict. You know, being a business that is highly exposed to the natural elements, it's hard to predict if how much the harvest will be. What we worked on this to leverage the risk was to have a very conservative production capacity limits. So with this respect, we set about the production capacity quite low. This doesn't protect, for example, for very extreme events, like if there is a massive flooding or a massive drought. Farmers cannot be protected from this. But this is how we try to leverage risks on this aspect. Of course, the worst case scenario might always happen, and we hope this doesn't happen. But there is no guarantee with agriculture in any case. To respond to this second question, there are around 25 families of farmers. We're talking not about single farmers, but about families of farmers that are using this. They are part of a cooperative, so it's a very communal work, if you want to say. They have regular meetings within their cooperatives, and they take most of the decision, such as to embark into this project jointly. But there are now 25 users now that are trialing this in the Canudos settlement in the call that is in just these days, as the semester is just started in Brazil.
So is that 100% of the families in Canudo?
No. There are 320 families in the settlement, but only 25 are part of the cooperative that decided to supply for PNAE. Some other farmers chose not to be part of these cooperatives because of various reasons. They found it not economically convenient in the past. They find it too complicated to take part, so they said they didn't decide to be part of this cooperative. So if you want to look at this way, the settlement has several families and several subunits, which are different cooperatives, which fulfill different purposes. So there is one cooperative that is dedicated to supplying schools, and that's the one we are working with, where there are 25 families. So it's around 10% of the whole settlement.
Yeah, and congratulations, it's wonderful. I mean, this work is amazing. I like it very much.
Thanks. Are there any more questions? So I do have a question. So I'm also thinking about the 1.5 million. So what do you think are the biggest difficulties to scale it up? Is that more a technological difficulty, or to convince those people to make use of it? So could you say something about that?
Well, I think there are two ways, two main challenges at this. There is, on one side, the technological challenge. We opted to go for the route of an app, which is a web app. So basically, it doesn't make all the calculation within your mobile phone, but it communicates with a web server. Yeah. For one reason, that it's a technology that spread most widely, even in lowest segments. So there is always one smartphone somewhere. But we're not expert on the development part, on this part. So none of us is. So we're working very slowly on developing the app because it's not our expertise, and we need to rely on external expertise. So for sure, the technological side is one challenge. Then there is one more educational challenge, if you want to put it that way. That is, first of all, to convince the farmers that this is positive for them, is profitable for them, it can make their life probably better. So convince them first that this is good, and secondly is to train them. So this is not a straightforward task. We had several sessions with the farmers. We benefited to have a lot of time with them, and this surely helped throughout the whole steps of the project. But this is surely a challenge if you want to scale this up to such a big audience. Probably a train the trainer mode would be the best.
Yeah.
But this is yet to be decided, let's say.
Yeah. No, it's really nice and certainly worth to scale up. So I wish you all the best with that. Is there maybe one last question? If not, then I'm also looking at the time. It's time. So again, thank you very much, Andrea, for this inspiring and very interesting presentation. Thank you all for coming. So the next webinar is in 2 months. You'll receive announcements on that. And the topic is optimizing the steering of boats to collect plastic from the oceans. There's a project done at the Ocean Cleanup. And the presenter is Jean Pauvillet from the London Business School. So that is it's now January, February, in March. But you will receive an announcement for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dick, for arranging this and having me here.